Thank you for being here and welcome to Motherhood Unfiltered. This workshop is perfect for folks who are pregnant, parenting, considering parenthood, or just supporting lovely mothers in their lives. We're so glad that you're here. And as a way of introduction, my name is Kristen Costa and I'm part of Octave's communications team. Before we jump into today's discussion, I just want to introduce some of our workshop hosts and panelists, Octave, Naps, and Tia. Starting with Octave, we are a modern mental health practice focused on creating a new standard for mental health care. We're available in 7 states where we do some in-person and virtual therapy. And we really believe that everyone should get the care they need when they need it. So we partner with insurance companies to make therapy more affordable and effective. And we provide individual, couples, and family therapy. NAPS provides trustworthy, real support and coaching for all stages of pregnancy and early parenting. You get guidance from honest, judgment-free registered nurses who are parents themselves. You'll be hearing from one of them today. And NAPS is available virtually nationwide. And Tia. Tia is a healthcare practice for women designed by women. Tia fuses gynecology, primary care, mental health, and evidence-based wellness services to treat women comprehensively. And they have virtual and in-person care in New York, California, and Arizona. If you can't tell, all of these companies are so passionate about supporting women wherever they are on their journey, whether it's by seeing a therapist, meeting with a healthcare provider, or connecting with a support group. Now, some light housekeeping before I introduce you to our amazing panelists. We are going to have time for some audience Q&A at the end, so please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to drop your questions. Drop them in as we go along, and we'll try our best to get to them. And then we're always trying to learn how to best deliver workshops and webinars that are going to meet your mental health needs. So please make sure to keep an eye out for the post-workshop survey at the end of this call so we can learn from you. And with that, I get to introduce you to our awesome panelists. I'm going to start with our 3 therapists in the house from Octave and then move on to our wonderful nurse practitioners. So first up is Kate, an Octave therapist who leads our clinical efforts in treating and supporting clients through perinatal issues. Her specialties include a wide range of perinatal and women's issues, as well as eating disorders. Amanda is an Octave therapist and clinical manager in the Bay Area. And with over 10 years of clinical experience, some of her specialties include postpartum mood disorders and grief and loss related to pregnancy. TJ is a clinical director and Octave therapist. She's dedicated most of her impressive career to helping clients who struggle with addiction and eating disorders. And at Octave, she leads a clinical team based in the Bay Area. And that brings us to our wonderful nurse practitioners in the house today. We have Emily, a nurse practitioner, as well as co-founder of NAPS. She brings her experience as a nurse practitioner and a leader, as a former labor and delivery nurse to the table as she supports people through pregnancy and the early stages of parenting. And last but definitely not least, we have Alexandra, or Alex, who's joining us today from TIA. Alex is a nurse practitioner with over a decade of experience in primary care and women's health. She's focused on reproductive health, which includes sexual health, full spectrum primary care for women, and everything in between. We're so excited for y'all to share these insights with everyone who's here today. So now, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kate to kick things off.
Thank you, Kristen. So this past weekend, I attended an event hosted by a mom I really admire. For the sake of this, let's call her Sarah. She owns this incredible business that serves moms. The business and the community it created for me was instrumental in my struggles in my first years of motherhood. Sarah is this extroverted, warm, beautiful, passionate woman. She's a successful business owner who has impacted so many lives for the better by providing moms like me with opportunities to connect and receive support and take care of themselves. She's such a joyful, enthusiastic mom, and she's pregnant with her 3rd baby. So I watched Sarah get up on stage to welcome everyone and start the event. And the first thing she said was, I know what you're all thinking. No, I'm not pregnant with twins. And no, I'm not about to pop any day now. And this really struck me. Here she was, this woman who is so many wonderful things, and she felt the need to address her body first. And the thoughts and comments and questions that she has likely received from others during her pregnancy. She's not alone in this experience. So many of us build up defenses after dealing with unwelcome attention to our bodies, either from friends or well-meaning family members or the media, advertising, and sadly, even ourselves. Instead of being asked, how are you feeling? Or how can I support you? Or tell me about your pregnancy or motherhood experience so far, attention is often directed to our physical appearance. It's no wonder that many new and expecting mothers face comments and criticisms about their bodies, which can lead to feelings of failure, shame, anxiety, depression, and even disordered eating. Sadly, our culture's preoccupation with a mother's body often robs us from being present with what really matters: our values, our gifts, our needs, and all the unseen pieces of ourselves that give us our true value and beauty. So, next slide, please, Kristen. We're going to do a quick poll reflecting on Sarah's story. I know that she's not alone in feeling the immediate pressure to think about her body. So we're going to take a quick poll to see how often any of you have felt that your physical appearance was a top concern during pregnancy or being postpartum. Yeah, okay. So we've got 46% said frequently, 23% said all the time, 26% said sometimes, 5% rarely, and 0% almost never. Yeah, thank you for answering, everyone. So next slide, please. As a mom, you want to uplift your own well-being for you and your family. And while most of us are familiar with that struggle, we're all here today because we want more for ourselves and for our families. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a discussion to boost our understanding of the connection between motherhood and body image, and identify practicable and immediately actionable ways to improve our relationship with our bodies. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kate, for sharing that powerful story. And thanks to all of you for sharing how y'all can relate. We're going to go ahead and jump into our discussion here. And before we kick off, just want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of a lot of terms that are thrown around all the time to describe some of the emotional ups and downs of a mother's experience, and just get clear definitions out there. So some of these terms I'm thinking of that I see thrown around are postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, baby blues, and body image. So Kate, I'm going to kick it right back to you actually. Can you help us define some of those terms?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I go into those terms, I wanted to acknowledge that this panel is focusing largely on the experiences of cis women, but we do want to honor the unique experiences of all birthing people. And so while this workshop is going to be limited in our scope, Octave therapists do work with all types of birthing parents. So going from that into depression during pregnancy and postpartum. So someone with postpartum depression might experience feelings like anger, sadness, irritability, guilt, lack of interest in the baby, changes in your eating habits or your sleeping habits, trouble concentrating, thoughts of hopelessness, feelings of helplessness, and sometimes even thoughts about harming yourself or harming the baby. And then anxiety in pregnancy or postpartum looks more like extreme worries, extreme fears, usually around the health and safety of the baby. Some people have panic attacks. They might experience shortness of breath, chest pain, dizziness, feelings of losing control, similarly to what you would expect with an asthma attack, or some people even think that they're having a heart attack.
Yeah, I'm going to hop into just to piggyback off of some of the terms that you were defining, Kate. I think baby blues is also a really great one to sort of identify. I think for me, oftentimes I hear folks get that confused with postpartum depression too. So wanted to call out that these are two different things. So with baby blues, that affects a larger number, 60 to 80% of new moms or birthing parents. And this is usually caused by a fluctuation in hormones right after birth, and then acute lack of sleep that can typically happen for a new birthing parent right after birth. And with these symptoms of baby blues, they're going to be less intense than the symptoms of postpartum depression as well. You'll also see baby blues, the timeline's a little bit different. So usually baby blues last anywhere from 2 days to about 2 to 3 weeks after birth as well. And so if you're noticing symptoms persist past that 2 to 3 week mark, then you're not really looking at baby blues anymore. And if you notice the symptoms are sounding a bit more like the ones that Kate you were just describing, then you're looking more at postpartum depression, or what we call a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder, or PMAD for short. And basically, PMAD is just a broader term to just point out that there's other anxiety and mood disorders that kind of fit under this umbrella. And it also kind of extends the length of time as well, because it's instead of just postpartum, it's perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, whereas perinatal is conception to 1 year after birth too. So basically, it's meant to cover kind of a bigger range of time and bigger range of symptoms as well.
Awesome. Thank you both for clarifying those terms and just really setting the foundation for today's discussion. If anyone's like me, you're like scrolling on social media all the time, but something that I've been seeing on my feeds is moms who are being a lot more open about like all the different things that can happen physically in your body as you're pregnant or as you're giving birth. So like showing off the stretch marks, it's been really encouraging to see that kind of light shed there. But there's still so many other changes that just aren't talked about as openly. So I'd love to hear from our nurse practitioners on the call about what some of those other physical changes are. And Emily, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is so important to talk about. And I appreciate, like you said, that you'll see people sort of sharing this experience and process on social media. Because I think what we've gone and done in our culture and society is we've sort of made up this traditional healing time for women, which feels like somewhere between 6 and 12 weeks, right? Like we see our OB postpartum perhaps at that 6 weeks appointment. That 6-week appointment. Our maternity leave traditionally is somewhere between upwards of 12 weeks in this country. And so that has sort of put out this like precedent that that's our healing time. And in fact, and then when you think about our healing time, it's our bodies and our organs and like everything that's trying to go back to this pre-pregnancy state. When in fact, postpartum pain, if we're just looking at physical symptoms, goes on well beyond 6 to 12 weeks. And in fact, really way beyond our traditional maternity leave. We actually have a known list of 28 physical symptoms that women commonly experience when they're postpartum, after they've given birth. And when we're looking at this list of 28 symptoms, we know on average that women experience somewhere between 5 and 6 of these symptoms from this list. I want to call them out and highlight them, especially for the women who are in the audience who have given birth, just to really sort of, I don't want to call them normal, but let's, because we say like things are normal, but they're common, which is back pain, headaches, breast pain, vaginal bleeding, cramps, hemorrhoids, hot flashes, chills, night sweats, diarrhea, fevers. We may have infections or high blood pressure. These are some pretty serious symptoms, right? And we know through research that women experience, like I said, on average, let's call it 5 of this list of 28, right? And I haven't even tapped into the emotional or, the mental symptoms that we're experiencing, like you're already touching on, right? With baby blues and depression and anxiety. And I think it's important to talk about these because, again, like we've, as a society, labeled like this traditional healing time that in fact, like is not enough time. And really, when we look at our healthcare system in pregnancy, we have like 15 OB visits, right? At least. We're not even counting ultrasounds or high risk pregnancies. And then bam, baby's here. And we're lucky to get one postpartum visit with our provider. And then you look at a baby, right? A baby has upwards of 8 visits in that first year of life. That's just a healthy visit. I haven't even tapped into sick visits. Just want to call out some of these things really so that they can be on our mind in terms of the physical symptoms. And it comes back to like needing to advocate really for the type of care that we need when we are experiencing these symptoms. And I'm sure, Alex, you see this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also, I think from personal experience and clinical experience, a lot of things we also don't talk about is our C-section scar, how it's going to change the way that your stomach appears. No matter what size a person is before or after, during pregnancy, the body looks different. And the scar could be a real shock to your system. It could be bringing you some sadness or some joy. For those who really wanted a vaginal delivery, it's a constant reminder that you had a cesarean. Or maybe that your delivery didn't go as planned. And, you know, a lot of people feel really proud. It's a war wound, or might start to feel that way, or this is a scar of how their babe came to the world. But it's also, you know, it's a reminder. It's there, especially when we're losing that baby, the baby belly, and there's some extra skin. Things look different, and it could be a shock. Something else that I don't think that people really talk about is vaginal dryness or painful sex after pregnancy. What's happening is there's an estrogen drop. It's allowing an increase for prolactin, so you can produce breast milk for those breastfeeding mothers. And you're losing estrogen also in the vagina, and the vaginal dryness can make for very painful sex. So, you know, there's lubes, there's estrogen tablets that can be used, but a lot of people report that they don't want to have sex because it's painful. It's also very normal to not want to have sex, even if it's painful or not. But it's also important to know that once the breast milk starts to decrease, generally the self-lubricating will come back.
Thank you, Emily and Alex, for just highlighting all the different things that can be happening in our bodies during these stages. In addition to all these physical changes on like how we're seeing ourselves, there's also this thing in society that really changes how we see ourselves. And we all know what it is. It's diet culture. There is this Washington Post columnist who she wrote such a powerful piece about it. And part of what she wrote was, this cultural bias is so pervasive and insidious that it turns almost everyone into either victim or collaborator, or if you're like me, into both. And just knowing how much our society is enveloped in diet culture, TJ, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how it impacts a mother's self-perception of her body.
Thank you, Kristen. I like that word insidious because it really is so true. The diet culture has a really long and insidious history in our society, and in fact can be traced back to as early as the ancient Greece. The culture would use moderation and regulation as a way to achieve calmness and supreme control. So the problem is that diets don't work. In actuality, they can create more harm than good, because restricting your food intake, counting calories, or portioning your food can add stress to the already overwhelming experience of becoming a new mom, and can exacerbate those feelings that you have of being overloaded or exhausted. The new mom diet culture can also be very damaging to someone's perspective of their body, because it can affect your positive, neutral, or even healing relationship with your body. New or past body image issues could be triggered and take somebody by surprise, which could in turn create some really unhealthy behaviors. So I think it's important to be aware of this so that you can plan on how you may be supported or support yourself. And it can be hugely beneficial to think about how you might manage that. And I think the important thing to remember is that you're also not alone when you're exposed to the diet culture, that some of the fitness or best mom influences that you might see on social media really struggle with body image issues. And they just don't talk about it, which is one of the most detrimental parts of the postpartum world.
Yeah, I would I agree with everything that TJ said, and want to remind everyone that diet culture's entire focus is on one very specific part of the perinatal experience: weight and body changes. So remember that diet culture is fueled by the diet, the beauty, the fitness industries. And I did a little bit of research. As of this year, the net worth of the diet industry in the US is roughly $72.6 billion. So they profit, and they profit a lot off of us thinking that there's something wrong with our bodies. That's how they make their money. They need us to believe that there's something wrong with our bodies so they can make the money. So this focus distracts from other more important perinatal experiences that a birthing person would benefit from prioritizing, like medical and physiological recovery, mental health, sleep and rest, bonding with their baby, feeding themselves, emotional recovery, transitioning into parenthood, building confidence as a new parent, all of those things.
Every time I hear like the number of how much they're making in that industry, it's always bigger, it's always grosser. But it's so important to have that context of the profits that are there. So just knowing that there's all this pressure, the bikini body complex, as I've heard it called, to look a certain way. We have diet culture creating all these pressures. What are some of those negative coping strategies that moms should keep an eye out for? And I think, TJ, do you want to share what some of those negative coping strategies are?
Sure. I think any recommendation for the latest diet to encourage bouncing back is the worst advice a new mom can receive. The only thing new moms should be focusing on is how to care for themselves while juggling caring for a whole other human being. Some negative coping strategies that a person could take on would be restricting your food intake or ignoring hunger cues, punishing your body to exercise or move too soon or too much when it hasn't fully healed, feeling like you have to get back to your pre-pregnancy clothing and punishing yourself physically or emotionally or mentally when you don't, or if you don't according to the timeline, comparing yourselves to others, prioritizing what it means to bounce back over self-care practices like taking a nap or drinking enough water or asking for help when you need it.
Awesome. TJ, thank you for sharing what it really looks like in practice so folks can keep an eye out for that in their life. Those are some of the negative behaviors and actions that we need to look out for. But on the positive side, like a lot of this comes down to like self-esteem and feeling comfortable and confident in your own skin. So, how can people practically build their sense of self-esteem? Kate, you want to walk us through some of those tips?
Yeah. I like very concrete, actionable ways to do this. So if that means taking a shower, if that means putting on a yummy smelling lotion that makes you feel good about yourself, if that means drinking a glass of water, avoiding foods that make you feel uncomfortable in your body, that cause gas and bloating, wearing clothes that are loose fitting, soft fabrics that feel comfortable when you put them on. I can't stress that enough. I mean, it's such a good way to ruin a good body image day is when you put on clothes that are too tight or too uncomfortable, right? Lighting a candle, playing some music, turning down lights in your house so you're not feeling overstimulated, taking a nap, asking for help, taking a walk, getting out and getting some fresh air. Self-care can look a lot different once you're a mom with a newborn, but it still can be done in small ways.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. And Emily, I feel like that's something that you probably hear a lot about in all the support groups that NAPS runs is like, how do you make it work for you? How do you build your self-esteem?
You can see me nodding my head this entire time. What's interesting is I hear, especially with you, TJ, talking about bouncing back, right? We're talking about your body and bouncing back after a baby. And it's really, I see this with my moms, not just with body image, but this perception of the bounce back culture of like being out and about and like getting out of the house and having your hair done and like what we show on social media. And so a couple quick things I want to like add to this too is of why we're wired this way as women and in this culture of like the bounce back culture. We have like human giver syndrome, which we all experience as women, which is sort of like, these are big definitions. So I'll give like quick ones, right? But it's like this belief that as women or moms in this case, we're like, we need to put all of our energy into creating this comfortable and successful environment for our families, right? Whether that's for doing everything for our kids or everything for our partners and our families. And then there's this concept that I see all the time, which is gatekeeping. And that's exactly as it sounds. And I am guilty of it. I've had 3 kids, but we become this ultimate gatekeeper as a mom where we're like, I'm gonna take control of everything, right? I'm gonna do everything for my baby, everything for my toddler. And we sort of like unintentionally block the people in our lives that are trying to help us. And so that plays into where I'm going with this, which is that in the bounce back culture, what you see on social media, if it looks like somebody's showing all like rainbows and unicorns, like that's not it. That's a snap picture. And the way that women and mothers are thriving in terms of like bouncing back, if that's what we want to call it, is actually just accepting help, right? And learning how to ask for help is one thing, but being able to accept it is another. And it is, in fact, a learned skill. And so to make it really simple for anybody listening out there, I say the same thing to all the new moms in my new mom support groups. The best place to start is small. And when moms in my groups get up in the morning, I'll say, I want you to say out loud one thing that you're going to do that day, one thing that you're not going to do, and one thing that you're going to ask for help with. And so one thing that I'm going to do today is come hell or high water, I'm going to get out of the house and I'm going to go for a walk because I need fresh air and naturally I'm going to get out. What I'm not going to do is fold the laundry that's been sitting in the dryer for 3 days because you know what, at the end of the day, when it's still sitting there, I'm not going to feel guilty about it because I said I wasn't going to do it, right? But when I took the walk at the end of the day, I'm going to feel pretty good about that. And then to be able to ask for help and accept help from a place of anticipation rather than desperation comes down to the practice of it. So in the morning, what is one thing that you can ask for help with that day? It can be really small. I'm going to ask my partner to pick up dinner on the way home today, right? Like, and there it is right there. So that's a big thing that I teach. And if we start it, ideally in pregnancy, right? Then all of a sudden we're just doing it when our baby is here. You can start this at any time. You can be reminded of it at any time. My kids are 8 and the older one's 8 now. I still have to remind myself of this. And then like this sense of protection, right? So like you're doing that for yourself. You and your partner are protecting each other as well. You know, what are you each doing that day once the baby or kids are here that's for you? And Kate, you gave all these great examples too. Like it's hard to show up and do things if you haven't called out like when you're going to do it or how you're going to do it. Like going for a run or taking a shower, like anything feels really, really hard. So I teach couples to like rely on each other. And so, a couple I worked with last week, we were like, what do you want to each do that'll feel good each day when the baby's here? The dad, in this case, it was a dad. He said, I have to go for a run every morning. I have to do that. That's what makes me feel good. That's what fills my cup. The wife, the mom in this situation said like, great, I need a long hot shower. And they called out what they needed and then they protected each other and they made sure that they allocated the time so it would happen. And so my biggest advice is like, ask for help, practice it, and just like get out early and often, get fresh air, get natural light, as I said, even if it's just for like 20 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing all that, Emily. And I love that you talked about the human giver syndrome. That book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, if y'all haven't read it, such a good like deep dive into what human giver syndrome is and how it impacts people. And I know one of my friends who's a first-time mom, she feels that really heavy human giver syndrome. I've been checking in on her to see how she's going. And the last time I was on the call with her, she's telling me about all of these ups and downs in her life and kind of these cry spells. And she goes, but it's just the hormones. And I hear that all the time from people. And it almost feels like they're kind of like gaslighting themselves into, it's just the hormones. But there's probably some truth to that. So I'd love to just better understand what is really happening in our bodies? Like, let's talk about that cliche. Alex, I'm sure you hear this all the time in your practice.
All the time. I said that all the time to myself. Well, it is the hormones. There is a decrease in estrogen. It happens rapidly after baby is delivered, and everything hormonally, physically, emotionally is fluctuating. Our minds, our bodies, our energy, and our hormones. And that, along with the mix of sleep deprivation and the body exerting more energy and calories, can really decrease the way we're regulating our emotions. So most women report it takes from 1 to 2 years to start to feel normal post-pregnancy. But again, this really depends on a person's personal experience in regards to how their pregnancy went, how their delivery went, what kind of support system do they have. So when we say it's just the hormones, or it's actually a true statement, but it sounds like it could also sound like someone's minimizing somebody's behavior. That, which is important to note, because a person is going to feel the way they feel regardless if it's hormones or not hormones. It's a person's feelings. So it's important to surround yourself around those who might understand or who will respect your feelings regardless of what's encouraging them or contributing to how you're feeling.
Awesome, Alex. Thanks for laying out like what is actually physically happening in the body. Amanda, I'm sure you hear that common response too in your practice. What would you say to folks to make sure that they're taking care of their mental health and well-being?
Yeah, well, Alex already, I was nodding my head because I agree, like surrounding yourself with family, social supports. And so far, everyone has mentioned, it was kind of like keeping a tally, like everyone has mentioned help, asking for help when you need it. And I think that's a huge way to safeguard mental health, to surround yourself with people that are supportive, ask for help when you need it. The other piece I would also say, which I know, Alex, you also touched on, is educating yourself around just these hormone shifts as well, so that you can really learn what's happening internally for me in my body. And I think this can actually really help to remove any self-shame and self-blame as well, because oftentimes you hear new moms say, they might feel like, oh, am I a bad mom if I don't have energy to do this, or I feel like I need a nap, or I'm not able to help, and be there for the kiddos. But to be able to understand what's going on internally for them with hormone shifts, hopefully will help new moms have more compassion towards themselves. I also heard, I think, Kate, you mentioned naps. I was going to say that's another great one to protect mental health. Sleeping when you can, whenever that may be, for however long that is, definitely sleep. And the last thing that I wanted to mention too is with clients, we often create what's called a postpartum support plan as well. And this is something that it's typically done prior to delivery, but you can really do it anytime. And this is where you might mention, okay, what would be some of my little yellow flags of, okay, what am I looking out for in case there are certain signs of distress or stress for me? And then I know, Kate, you mentioned some great coping strategies as well. Like, what are some of those coping strategies that I want? Maybe let me jot those down as well. And then on this, you might also include, who are my support people? Who what will they do? Will somebody help bring me some food, get groceries, laundry? Familiarizing yourself with community resources as well. Setting up healthy boundaries with family and friends. And I would also just emphasize that this is not something that you would need to do alone too. You can set this plan up with friends, family. You can talk to a therapist about it as well, but it's just another way to kind of protect that mental well-being for yourself.
Awesome. I love the idea of supporting like a very tactical plan. And y'all, we're getting some really compelling questions here in the Q&A. Thanks y'all for dropping that in. So we're just going to do one more question here and get to that audience Q&A soon. I know I'm itching to get to those. So last up, Emily, TJ, y'all have talked about some of these things that we see on social media, some of these pressures, but along with some of these pressures, or maybe just like the glamour shots of life that we see of folks, there's also like some myths and misinformation out there when it comes to motherhood. So while I have 5 experts in the room, I would love to just hear y'all set the record straight. Like, what is that one hill you want to die on? Like, that you want to correct for all the folks here? And feel free, whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, I can start. I would say, and especially as an eating disorder therapist as well, that comments, positive and negative, are just generally unhelpful. Even if we think we're saying something positive or, kind, it can just reinforce the focus on the body.
Good one. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go, Alex?
Sure. Yeah. I just wanted to talk about baby brain versus mommy brain, to share a quick experience that I had. I remember when I was pregnant and I turned to a coworker who had just come back from maternity leave. And I was just like, I can't wait to deliver this baby because I'm so sick of this baby brain. And she was like, oh no, it gets worse. And she's right. It does. But this baby brain, mommy brain might sound like this myth, but it's actually true. There's been a lot of research that there's a reduction in gray matter in a pregnant and postpartum brain. Gray matter is responsible for our executive functioning, making decisions, and emotions. And the research that I was looking at says that it's anywhere from 2 to 6 years where this is actually happening. It also happens in adolescence, which is a fun fact that I also found. So that being said, it's important to be kind to yourself. Your brain is not broken. This is a natural and physiological phase. And again, kind of going back to what Amanda has mentioned, it's very important to surround yourself around people who are supportive.
I'll hop in. It kind of goes in line with what you're talking about, Alex, but there's this idea of the masquerade that I often hear about with the moms that I work with who are afraid to, again, let other people see their mental health challenges that, they might be experiencing. This idea of, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to ask for help. I don't want to appear like a bad parent. So I would definitely want to bust that idea of the masquerade. And again, I feel like I'm on my soapbox with this, but encourage reaching out for support, getting screened for those perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, seeking education around those hormone changes, and so on.
I also would love to encourage everybody to try and not yield to the bounce back narrative, to try your best to fight against that urge, because it's important to take your time to do what feels right for you, for your body, for your mental health, for your soul, to focus on prioritizing what feels good for you as the expert of your own body, and the progress and the growth and the change that you're going to embrace as you go through the journey of motherhood.
Can jump right off of that, because I feel like, this concept of bounce back, or that someone has it all or is doing it all on their own, like you're saying, Amanda, it's not real. And it can be really tricky, especially when you're tired and with a baby at home, to watch yourself on comparing yourself to other people, or that quick thing that you saw or read, or when you walked by someone downtown. And so I think the phrase, we've lost somewhere along the way, the phrase that it takes a village. I know we hear it all the time, but there still is a village. It just looks different, I think, in this day and age for our, communities and moms. It's still there though. And so that reminder of who is your village, right? And getting really clear on who your people are that make that up. And in knowing that it looks different, could you actually really thoughtfully write it out, right? Whether it's your pediatrician, your lactation consultant, your therapist, your best friend that has a baby the same age as your baby, and it can be a short list, but who can make the village, and who are you accepting the solicited advice from? That way, when you see or hear or read something unsolicited, or whoa, it came your way, you'll still it's not going to not happen, right? But you have this ability to say whoa, they're not my people. They're not in my village. They're not on my list, whatever you want to call it. And then just that final reminder that asking for help, to me, and I think everyone here would agree, it's a sign of strength, not weakness. So just remember that.
I love what
Thanks.
you said. Sorry, I just love what you said, Emily, about really like being picky and choosy about your village. And with the clients I work with, especially the ones who struggle with eating disorders, body image issues, it's completely unrealistic for me in this day and age to say, oh, just get off social media, right? Like don't have an Instagram anymore. But if we can be very picky and choosy about who we choose to follow, really being mindful of, do I feel better after looking at this Instagram mommy influencers posts, or do I feel worse about myself? And really starting to unfollow a lot of things that can trigger negative feelings and emotions about ourselves. Being very mindful of the friends we hang out with. Are they constantly talking about weight and diets and image, or are they talking about their babies and how they feel? And do you feel comfortable really sharing about how you're really doing with them? Being very picky and choosy about who you spend your time with. Are the medical professionals you're working with, are they making comments about your body or your weight in maybe a way that you're not comfortable with? Maybe being more concerned, or maybe considering changing a practitioner. Just being very picky and choosy. I love that.
Yeah, well said, both of you.
Cross someone out at any time. You can erase.
Yeah.
Out, you're in. There you go.
Yeah, Brene Brown has this great way of putting it, like identifying your square squad and like taking a small square, like a post-it, and those are the people who you trust, and it makes you narrow it down so that you're not just accepting insights and advice from everyone. So love that. Maybe use a post-it later if y'all need it. But one thing that we will send you away with is a takeaway download for all of you on the call. And what this is a selection of a bunch of the tips that you heard today. In case you weren't jotting down everything, you'll see some podcast recommendations if you're a busy mom on the go, some body affirmations, and then a little more information about NAPS and PIA and Octave in case there's, someone you do want to invite into your village. So we have a QR code here. You're welcome to just get out your phone, scan that so you could download this takeaway with tips. We'll also be sending it out via email with a recording later. And now's the time we get to jump into our audience Q&A. There are so many great questions in here. So we're going to try to get to everything that we can before the hour. I'm going to keep this up for a second in case people want to scan that QR code. But let's go ahead and jump in with one of our first questions. And panelists, feel free, just jump in if you got insights to share, all right? So our first question, how should one deal with advocating for ourselves as a woman of color, especially faced with provider bias that persons of color are able to tolerate higher level of pain and discomfort?
I think, am I muted? No. So I think it's really important to make sure that you find a provider that is also a person of color, and making sure you that you maybe, interview some people before committing to a provider that you're going to stay with. And maybe asking some questions of, well, how would you approach this? How would you approach that? I think it's really important.
I just want to add, as like a former labor and delivery nurse, especially looking at the OB stage and through labor and delivery, having the built-in support that you're going to choose of who's coming with you to your visits as like a second or third person that's there to advocate and ask questions, as well as somebody, if, throughout the labor, like we look at a labor doula, and a doula is great. It's wonderful. Another person to advocate, but we do know through research, it doesn't have to be a doula. Like you can really train family and friends on how to not just support you in labor, but it comes back to that advocating for yourself and knowing what questions to be asking or to stop when something like doesn't feel right. And one thing that I teach, especially along these lines in all of our classes, is like the question of, what are my options? You write that question down, like, what are my options? And to be able to go to your provider in any moment, you always have options too, to make sure that they're explaining and answering things and giving you your options as you deserve them too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily and Alex, for speaking to that question. Another question we have here from the audience is, How can we actively challenge ourselves to accept help? I know we've talked a lot about it, but easier said than done, right? What are some small steps to expressing your needs or accepting the help?
I always encourage clients to view it as a practice. I am practicing asking for help. The first time is going to be very uncomfortable, and maybe even part of me doesn't want to do it. And I'm going to practice doing it. So maybe that's practicing something small, like, hey, mom, can you hold the baby for a second? Right? Or, hey, mom, can you grab me a glass of water? Or, dad or friend or whatever. And then building up to maybe things that you would actually like help with, like, could you do the dishes? Or could you watch the baby for an hour while I take a nap? Or could you make me dinner? But it's like anything, it's a practice. It's not going to feel comfortable beginning. The more you do it, the more comfortable it feels.
Yeah, I would also add
and
to
you
that
can
too.
practice. Go ahead, Amanda.
TJ.
You take it. No, go.
I was gonna say, what was I gonna say now? Start with also maybe just asking yourself too, because I think it's hard to start with asking somebody else. But if you start with saying, okay, I'm waking up this morning, what do I need right now? Like, what is the thing that I need? Maybe I need coffee. Maybe I need a donut, like whatever it is. Like, I need a nap. I need to talk to a friend. Start with that before you practice the next small step, which Kate, you mentioned, starting with something small, but yeah, honoring what your needs are.
Awesome, Amanda. Thank you. And TJ, I think you were about to hop in. Anything you wanted to add?
I was just going to say that before you can practicing before. So like maybe anticipating and practicing with a friend, like here are some things that I probably am not going to ask for help with. So maybe we could just, come up with a plan where you help with that until I get better at asking directly. So identifying areas that you might struggle with, and then having people sort of enlisted in that before you have the baby or thinking about it.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the people who are enlisted, because we have a question that's kind of on the flip side of this scenario, which is, how do you recommend providing support and help to a new mom who hasn't asked for help or maybe won't accept help?
I love this one. I think that for me, it's about being there. It's about the consistency. So continuing to offer help or preemptively doing things that you think would be helpful, and not taking it personally if the other person just takes their time to kind of reach out. I think the best thing is knowing that you're not alone, that somebody in the world is thinking about you and is wanting to be there for you and is going to be there for you, even if it's been 2 months, 6 months, a year before you kind of reconnect and say, like, I'm struggling or I need help, that they know that there's no judgment. I think that's something that's kind of the best thing you can do. And just being very consistent in your offering and unconditional support.
I just want to jump in really quick and mention that as someone who will never ask, it's very hard for me to ask for help. I didn't want to ask for help. I needed so much help. I had a postpartum doula and friends. I just be like, no, I'm okay. Everything's fine. The people who just showed up or who just come in the house and not talk to me and just wash the dishes, just like the littlest things I will always remember, were the most helpful. Because you don't really know how much you need it.
Alex,
sometimes you do and you're scared.
Totally.
Or you're selfish or stubborn, like me.
Like family and caregivers will constantly say, especially like in our grandparent or caregiver class, like, I want to help, but the person isn't letting me. And I think too, building off of TJ, also it's how it's offered, right? If I say to a new mom, hey, I'd love to bring you dinner. Would you like me to bring you dinner this week? It's easy for that mom to be like, no, like, because back to human giver syndrome, being a martyr, gatekeeping, we're like, no, I'm fine. Versus, I'm going to bring you dinner this week. Like, do you want it Tuesday or Wednesday? Right? Or what night do you want it? I'm coming with dinner. Or like you said, Alex, like when you're in the house, like just loading the dishwasher, just folding the laundry that's sitting there, or like nobody will ever say no to holding a baby. So if you're afraid to like dive into someone's house and their laundry and their dishes, just offer to hold the baby.
Yeah, let mom take a shower.
Yeah, let me hold the baby. I'm going to hold the baby right now. I'm available for the whole hour. Go do whatever you want. Go shower, go lay down, just sit in silence. Like, but no one's going to say no to that, right? I don't think they would.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks again for all these practical tips. And Emily, I'm glad you are off mute right now. I have a feeling this next question is going to be one that you may want to speak to. Someone in the audience asked, can someone speak on the body image issues that come up when you have lactation struggles and fighting breast is best myth?
Ooh, yeah. This is a again, like when you look at social media and our culture and how we're wired, unfortunately, it keeps going. There's a topic for everything, right? And this is very real. I think it really goes back to what I was talking about of knowing who your people are, because this happens in pregnancy. Like Kate, you said, don't mentioning something about somebody's body in any context. It's never helpful, right? It's going to happen. The bounce back culture, it's going to happen. The choosing to formula feed instead of breastfeeding, someone's going to say something dumb that they shouldn't to you about your feeding choice, and it's not their business, but it does happen. So back to the people, or Brene Brown's square, like whatever you want to call it. I can't prevent the unsolicited advice or the unhelpful comments, but what I can do is help you as a parent make a feeding choice in this example that is best for you, right? And that could be breastfeeding, that could be combo feeding, that could be formula feeding, that could be pumping. And then when you receive that information or unsolicited advice, or you see it, you're going back to that list of like, they're not in my village. They're not on my list. I've decided this with my pediatrician. I've talked to Emily, my lactation consultant. We've made this plan. I heard what she said, but she's not on my list. So it's in one ear and out the other. Versus if somebody on your list says something, you can, okay, like they are a trusted person. I'll take a minute to hear what they have to say, but I'm still going to think about it and my options and choose what's best for me. But unfortunately, it's not, and it's very real, this feeding struggle out there. It's sad, honestly, but it goes on forever, like into the toddler years. How are you feeding your baby? Are you sleep training? Are you going to school or daycare? Are you, it just never ends. So this list is very relevant forever, if that's helpful.
I like that, Emily. I want to speak to the part about body image, and I'm assuming probably like shame that goes along with maybe not being able to breastfeed if that was part of your dream or expectation. That is such a devastation to some moms or parents who are hoping to breastfeed and chest feed. Oh my gosh, breastfeeding is one of the hardest parts of motherhood, of parenthood, of postpartum. I did not realize with my first baby how literally, like, not literally, but almost back-breaking it was. I got carpal tunnel. I would do it like crying. I needed like 10 pillows. I needed to be sitting a certain way. Like no one could be talking to me. Like it would take an hour. It was exhausting. It was physically painful. It hurt everywhere. The infections you could get, all of that stuff, the anxiety. Breastfeeding is so incredibly hard, and it's so different for every body out there. You could have a sister who had no problem breastfeeding, and then you didn't produce any milk. You could be an overproducer. You could, produce not quite enough, and you have to, like all of these things that are completely out of our control. Breastfeeding is one of the hardest things. And I think it kind of goes with what TJ was talking about with like bounce back culture. I think there's this whole like myth that breastfeeding should be beautiful and easy breezy. And, if it's not, then there's something wrong with you. And if you don't like it, what's wrong with you? Or if you're not producing enough milk, you're just not eating enough oatmeal. And, just like all of these myths that go along with it. Every body is completely different. And the more you kind of come back to what feels right for my body and what do I know to be right for my baby, it can be healing for that shame and guilt that often comes up. Every mother's body is perfect for their baby. And sometimes that means giving it formula because that body is not producing enough.
Yeah, thank you, Kate, and thank you for so transparently sharing your story. I'm sure it's making a lot of folks feel seen in their own journey. Probably one of our last questions here as we come up on time, but going back to that idea of the village, someone asked, any advice or suggestions for support when you live away from family and friends?
I mean, this happens all the time in our classes, especially, parents are like, I hear you. I'm ready to, take in the help or bring it in, but I don't have anyone around. And so sometimes it can be really like one small thing in terms of outsourcing, right? And that could be that you're making like a financial choice of like, I'm going to outsource groceries when the baby's here. I'm going to outsource dog walking all the way to like, I am going to hire a baby nurse or a doula or someone to come in even once a week to check on me and help me, right? So there is this concept of like, it might be that you choose to put some money behind the village and the help. And then it's in recognizing that where are you meeting your people? And so the best thing that you can do, especially if family and friends are not local, is to make one friend that has a baby the same age as yours. Because that's going to be sort of your lifeline for getting out of the house, going for that walk, and having that person to talk to that truly understands like how you're feeling, how your night was. And then, yeah, like slowly building from there.
I also used this. Sorry.
Go ahead, TJ.
My family and friends live far away. Most of them live overseas, and I used an app when I had my first son, and it was like a dating app for new moms. When you like say what things you'd like to do, and I think it was called Peanut. What you like to do, what you don't like to do, that sort of thing, and then you can like have a play date with the other mom and the baby. And I thought that was pretty cool because it matches you with people with like interests, or it wasn't as awkward as meeting somebody just randomly at the park.
I love that, TJ. Making friends in motherhood is part of self-care. So again, it might feel awkward. We probably haven't had to make new friends since college, right? Or maybe our first job out of college. Or in our early 20s, and really pushing yourself. If I'm going to go to this mommy class, this music class with my baby, or this breastfeeding class at the hospital, and I'm going to say hi to one other person and ask them how old their baby is, that's my challenge for today. It's going to feel awkward. And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Well said, Kate. And thank you to all of you panelists for sharing your insights with us today through this discussion, and to everyone who joined us. I know we're just about at time, but just again, want to say thank you. I feel like I learned a lot, and I hope everyone here found it valuable too. Make sure, if you haven't already, to just grab these tips so that you have something in your tool belt that you have to empower you to fuel your well-being. And also, if you have a moment to take this quick survey, let us know what you want to hear about and how we can improve these types of discussions to make sure that we're meeting your needs and you're seeing value there. So with that, I'll let everyone get back to the rest of your day. Thank you again to everyone, and have a great day. Thanks, y'all.
Bye, everyone.